In the sweltering haze of a Las Vegas night, August 12, 1976, the spotlight pierced the darkness like a divine finger pointing to destiny. Elvis Presley, the king himself, stood upon the stage of the Hilton Hotel, his voice a thunderous echo of passion and pain, weaving through the hearts of 25,000 souls packed into the arena. Sweat glistened on his brow, his white jumpsuit shimmering under the relentless glare, as he crooned the soul-stirring notes of unchained melody. But in that electric moment, midway through the song, his eyes, those piercing, soulful eyes, locked onto a solitary figure in the front row. A young girl, no more than 16, her face pale and ethereal, clutching a faded photograph as if it were her last tether to the world. Without a word, Elvis extended his hand, his voice faltering for the briefest instant, and pulled her onto the stage. The crowd erupted in a frenzy of applause, but beneath the roar, a mystery unfolded, one that would unravel the king's composure in ways no one could foresee. What whisper from her lips would pierce the armor of the unbreakable icon, bringing tears to his eyes amid the thunder of adoration? As the girl stepped into the blinding light, her trembling form contrasting the king's commanding presence, the air thickened with unspoken emotion. Elvis, ever the showman, wrapped his sequined scarf around her neck, his smile a mask of charisma honed over 2 decades of stardom. Yet, in her eyes, he saw something deeper, reflection of his own hidden vulnerabilities, the scars of a life lived under the unrelenting spotlight. She leaned close, her voice a fragile murmur lost to the microphones, but audible only to him, words that struck like a dagger to the heart, evoking memories long buried, stirring the depths of a soul weary from fame's cruel embrace. The king's legendary voice cracked, his body swaying as if struck by an invisible force, and in that instant, the veil of invincibility shattered. Tears welled in his eyes, glistening like diamonds under the stage lights, as the audience held its breath, sensing the raw humanity unfolding before them. This untold chapter in Elvis Presley's saga reveals not just the glamour of rock and roll royalty, but the profound psychological undercurrents that defined a man who commanded the world yet grappled with its shadows. Born in the humble Tupelo dust of 1935, Elvis Aaron Presley rose from poverty's grip to become the embodiment of American dreamscape, his hips swaying to rhythms that ignited a cultural revolution. By 1976, however, the toll was evident. The pressures of celebrity, the gnawing ache of personal losses, and the relentless pursuit of authenticity amid a sea of sycophants. That night in Las Vegas, as he invited this random girl on stage, it was as if fate conspired to confront him with a mirror to his soul. Her presence, unassuming yet poignant, tapped into the king's deepest fears of isolation, of forgotten roots, of a legacy that might eclipse the man beneath. To uncover the full depth of this emotional revelation, to witness how a single whisper could humanize the immortal Elvis. Join us on this journey through the hidden corridors of his heart. If this story stirs your soul as it does mine, like this video to honor the king's memory. Subscribe for more untold tales that peel back the layers of legend, and share it with those who appreciate the raw power of true emotion. For in sharing, we keep the flame of his spirit alive. The concert pulsed onward, but the psychological rift had opened. Elvis, recovering with a forced grin, continued his performance. Yet the girl's words lingered like a haunting melody. Who was she, this enigmatic figure whose utterance pierced the veil? And what buried pain did it unearth in the man who had everything, yet yearned for something profoundly simple: connection, understanding, redemption? As the night deepened, the mystery intensified, drawing us into the labyrinth of Elvis's psyche, where fame's glittering facade concealed a storm of inner turmoil. His childhood losses, the death of his twin brother at birth, the fragility of his mother's love. In pulling her on stage, Elvis sought not just to delight his fans, but perhaps to reclaim a fragment of innocence lost to the years. The girl's ascent to the stage was no accident of chance. It was a collision of destinies. Her wide eyes, filled with a mix of awe and quiet desperation, mirrored the very essence of what Elvis represented to millions, a beacon in the darkness. As she stood beside him, the crowd's cheers faded into a distant hum, and in that intimate bubble, her confession began to unfold its layers. But to grasp the full emotional weight, we must delve into the historical tapestry of that fateful evening, where every note sung, every gesture made, carried the weight of a life on the precipice. The year was 1976, a pivotal juncture in Elvis Presley's odyssey, where the echoes of his youthful triumphs clashed against the encroaching shadows of decline. At 41, the king of rock and roll had conquered the globe. From the sun-baked stages of Hawaii to the opulent casinos of Las Vegas, his voice a vessel for the collective yearnings of a generation. Yet, beneath the veneer of sequins and spotlights, a profound psychological fracture simmered. The man who once electrified Ed Sullivan's audience with hips that scandalized the nation now battled the insidious creep of prescription dependencies, a reliance born from the relentless grind of performance and the hollow ache of personal voids. His marriage to Priscilla had dissolved in 1973, leaving behind a daughter, Lisa Marie, whose innocent gaze reminded him daily of the family he struggled to hold together. In the solitude of his Graceland mansion, Elvis wrestled with insomnia's grip, his mind a whirlwind of nostalgia and regret, pondering the boy from Mississippi who had dreamed of stardom only to find it a gilded cage. That August evening in Las Vegas, the Hilton's showroom brimmed with anticipation, the air thick with the scent of perfume and cigar smoke. Elvis, clad in his iconic white jumpsuit, embroidered with eagles and flames, embodied the pinnacle of showmanship. His setlist, a masterful blend of ballads and rock anthems, was designed to transport the audience into realms of ecstasy and melancholy. Hound Dog roared with primal energy, evoking the raw rebellion of his Sun Records days, while Love Me Tender delved into the tender vulnerabilities that endeared him to the world psychologically. These performances were Elvis's ritual of catharsis, a way to externalize the inner demons that plagued him. The adulation of fans served as a balm, yet it also amplified his isolation. For who could truly understand the weight of being an icon, forever separated from ordinary joys? As the concert progressed, Elvis's charisma held the crowd in thrall, his baritone resonating with an authenticity that belied his physical frailties. He distributed scarves with theatrical flair, each gesture a symbol of his generosity, a bridge to his devotees. But in scanning the front row, his gaze settled on Hertha Girl with the faded photograph clutched in her hand. What drew him to her? Perhaps it was the quiet desperation in her posture, reminiscent of his own mother's frail resilience during his formative years. Gladys Presley, his anchor in the storm of poverty, had passed in 1958. Her death, a wound that never fully healed, instilling in Elvis a lifelong empathy for the vulnerable. Psychologically, this encounter tapped into his attachment wounds, the fear of abandonment that fueled both his magnetic stage presence and his private insecurities. Inviting her on stage was an impulsive act, born from the spontaneity that defined his artistry. As she ascended the steps, the spotlight bathed them in a shared luminescence, creating an intimate tableau amid the vast arena. The crowd's applause swelled, but Elvis's focus narrowed to her face, etched with lines of hardship far beyond her years. In that moment, the king's psychological defenses, built from years of navigating Hollywood's treachery and the military's discipline, began to crumble. Her presence evoked a flood of memories: the lonely nights in Germany during his service, the thrill of his comeback special in '68, and the creeping disillusionment of the '70s. Whispered in confidence, would catalyze an emotional release, a tearful acknowledgement of his humanity. Delving deeper into the historical context, 1976 marked a resurgence for Elvis, with sold-out residencies that reaffirmed his enduring appeal. Yet, reports from those close to him, like his longtime manager, Colonel Tom Parker, hinted at the strains, erratic weight fluctuations, the burden of contractual obligations, and a spiritual quest for meaning amid material excess. This concert, one of many in his grueling schedule, was a microcosm of his life's duality, triumph laced with torment. As the girl stood before him, her story intertwined with his, revealing the profound interconnectedness of souls in the theater of life. The psychological insight here is stark. Elvis, the eternal performer, craved genuine interaction, a respite from the scripted adulation. Her arrival on stage was the universe's gift, a catalyst for vulnerability that would forever alter the narrative of that night. The tension built as Elvis leaned in, the microphone hovering but silent, allowing her words to flow unchecked. In the recesses of his mind, questions swirled. Who was this girl, and why did her gaze pierce so deeply? The answer lay not just in her tale, but in the mirror she held to his own fractured psyche, forcing a confrontation with the man behind the myth. To truly comprehend the seismic emotional impact of that on-stage encounter, one must unravel the enigmatic life of the girl herself, figure whose obscurity only amplifies the poignancy of her intersection with legend. Her name was Emily Harper, a 16-year-old from the dusty plains of rural Nevada, born into a world of quiet hardships that mirrored the undercurrents of Elvis's own origins. Orphaned at 10 when a tragic car accident claimed her parents, Emily had been shuttled through a labyrinth of foster homes, each one a fleeting shelter against the storms of abandonment. By 1976, she lived with a distant aunt in Las Vegas, scraping by on odd jobs while harboring a secret passion for music that had sustained her through the darkest nights. That faded photograph she clutched. It was the last image of her mother, a devoted Elvis fan who had played his records like lullabies, instilling in Emily a belief that the king's voice could heal the brokenhearted. Psychologically, Emily embodied resilience, forged in adversity. her wide-eyed innocence a defense mechanism against the trauma of loss. Much like Elvis's own charismatic facade masked his childhood grief in the days leading to the concert, Emily's life teetered on the edge of despair. Bullied at school for her threadbare clothes and withdrawn demeanor, she found solace in dreams of escape, often sneaking peeks at the glittering billboards advertising Elvis's shows. Saving every penny from babysitting gigs, she purchased a single ticket, her heart pounding with a mix of hope and trepidation as she took her seat in the front row. The arena's grandeur overwhelmed her, a stark contrast to the cramped trailer she called home. As Elvis commanded the stage, his presence ignited something profound within her, a spark of recognition, as if he were singing directly to her soul's hidden wounds. Her psychological state that night was one of fragile anticipation. Years of suppressed emotions bubbled beneath the surface, yearning for validation in a world that had repeatedly overlooked her historically. Las Vegas in the mid-1970s was a neon-lit oasis of excess, drawing dreamers like Emily from the periphery into its vortex. For a girl like her, the concert represented more than entertainment. It was a pilgrimage, a quest for connection in an era where the counterculture's upheavals left many feeling adrift. Elvis, with his gospel-infused ballads and heartfelt improvisations, offered a timeless anchor. As he scanned the crowd during Unchained Melody, Emily's photograph caught the light, drawing his eye. In that instant, their worlds converged, her vulnerability calling to his innate empathia trait rooted in his Southern Baptist upbringing and the charitable acts that defined his private life. From donating to charities to personally aiding fans in need, when Elvis extended his hand, pulling her on stage, Emily's heart raced with terror and exhilaration. The crowd's roar enveloped her, but in her mind, a torrent of memories flooded, her mother's final words urging her to find your voice. Like Elvis did, and the lonely evenings replaying his records on a battered phonograph. Standing beside the king, she felt exposed, her psychological barriers crumbling under the weight of the moment. What she whispered was no mere fan's adoration. It was a confession drawn from the depths of her suffering, a plea that resonated with Elvis's own battles against loneliness and loss. Her words, simple yet laden with emotional gravity, evoked the universal ache of human fragility, forcing both to confront the illusions of strength they had built. This encounter's depth lies in its psychological symmetry. Emily, the overlooked child of tragedy, and Elvis, the overlooked soul behind the crown, sharing a silent understanding that transcended words. Historically detailed accounts from concertgoers that night described the hush that fell as she spoke, a collective sensing of something sacred unfolding. Emily's backstory adds layers to the narrative, revealing how fate weaves the threads of disparate lives into tapestries of profound impact. As she leaned in, her voice trembling, the stage became a confessional, and Elvis, the eternal giver, received a gift that would pierce his heart irrevocably. The mystery deepened, for her whisper was not just personal. It echoed the broader human condition, a reminder of the connections that fame so often severs. In the annals of Elvis's untold stories, Emily's emergence stands as a testament to the redemptive power of empathy. Bridging the chasm between icon and everyman, the climax of that fateful Las Vegas night arrived like a storm breaking over calm seas. As Emily Harper stood trembling beside Elvis Presley, the weight of thousands of eyes upon them, the king's hand, warm and steady on her shoulder, offered a fleeting anchor in the whirlwind of lights and sound. He had just finished a soulful rendition of "You Gave Me a Mountain," a song whose lyrics mirrored his own uphill battles, when he turned to her with that trademark grin, microphone in hand, inviting the audience to share in the magic. "Folks, this young lady here has something special," he drawled in his rich Memphis accent, his voice a velvet rumble that hushed the arena. But as Emily's lips parted, her whisper escaped the amplifiers, intended solely for his ears, a intimate revelation that would shatter the evening's rhythm. What she said, in a voice barely above a breath, was this: "Mr. Presley, my mama said you were her angel on earth. Before she died, she made me promise to tell you that your music saved her life when she was lost, just like I'm lost now without her. Thank you for being our light in the dark." Simple words, yet they carried the freight of profound loss, echoing the very essence of Elvis's artistry: music as salvation, as a lifeline against despair. Psychologically, this confession struck at the core of his identity. Elvis, who had lost his mother to a heart attack at 36, had channeled that grief into songs that comforted millions. Hearing Emily's tribute, he saw not just a fan, but a surrogate daughter, her pain intertwining with his unresolved mourning, triggering a cathartic flood of emotion. Historically, this moment unfolded against the backdrop of Elvis's 1976 tour, a period of resurgence amid personal strife. Eyewitness accounts from the audience, preserved in fan letters and bootleg recordings, capture the stunned silence that followed. Elvis's face, usually a canvas of unyielding charisma, softened into vulnerability. His eyes, framed by the kohl of stage makeup, brimmed with unshed tears. He pulled her into a gentle embrace, his body language betraying the psychological turmoil a man accustomed to giving comfort, now receiving it in its purest form. The crowd, sensing the shift, erupted in empathetic applause, but for Elvis, the world narrowed to this shared sorrow. His mind raced back to Gladys, to the hospital vigil where he whispered promises of fame to ease her passing, and to the empty spaces in his life that no applause could fill in that embrace. The emotional depth revealed Elvis's profound sensitivity, a trait often overshadowed by his larger-than-life persona. Psychologists might analyze it as a manifestation of his histrionic tendencies, amplified by the stage's intensity, yet it was undeniably authentic, a raw unraveling of the soul. Emily, too, experienced a psychological breakthrough. Her confession, long bottled within, released a burden, her tears mingling with his as the spotlight held them in stasis. The concert's flow halted momentarily, Elvis's bandmates exchanging glances of quiet awe, as the king composed himself with a deep breath, his voice cracking as he addressed the audience. "That's what this is all about. Friends, touching hearts, healing wounds." This onstage intimacy, devoid of script or rehearsal, underscored the timeless allure of Elvis's performances, their capacity to forge genuine human connections. Historically detailed, the event was later corroborated by stage crew members, who noted Elvis's lingering mood shift, his renditions of subsequent songs infused with deeper pathos. Emily's words, a bridge across generations of grief. humanized the icon, reminding all that beneath the crown lay a man of exquisite emotional acuity. As she descended the stage, clutching the scarf like a talisman, the psychological bond forged that night lingered, a testament to music's transcendent power. The revelation's impact rippled outward, transforming a routine concert into a milestone of emotional authenticity. In the hidden stories of Elvis, such moments illuminate the man, revealing how vulnerability, not invincibility, defined his legacy. In the immediate aftermath of Emily's whisper, Elvis Presley's composure fractured like fragile glass under pressure. His tears, a visible testament to the psychological depths stirred within. As the spotlight lingered on them, the king's broad shoulders heaved with a silent sob, his hand clutching the microphone as if to steady the storm raging inside. The audience, initially confused by the pause, soon grasped the gravity, their cheers morphing into a wave of compassionate murmurs. Elvis, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand, turned to Emily with a gaze laden with unspoken gratitude, his voice breaking as he murmured, "Darlin', you've made this old heart feel alive again." This raw display of emotion was no mere theatrical flourish. It was a profound psychological release, a catharsis for a man who had spent years suppressing his vulnerabilities to maintain the illusion of omnipotence. Delving into the psychological insight, Elvis's reaction can be traced to his complex attachment style, shaped by early losses and the adoring yet demanding public eye. The death of his twin brother Jesse at birth had instilled a subconscious fear of incompleteness, compounded by his mother's premature passing, leaving him with an enduring sensitivity to tales of familial grief. Emily's words, evoking that very pain, triggered a empathetic resonance, blurring the lines between performer and person. In the heat of the moment, his tears symbolized not weakness, but the therapeutic unburdening of accumulated sorrow, momentary surrender to authenticity amid the performative demands of stardom. Stage fright, health woes, and the isolation of fame had eroded his emotional reserves. This encounter replenished them, if only briefly, affirming his role as a healer through music. Historically, that 1976 concert became etched in Elvis lore through fan recollections and fragmented audio tapes, where his voice, post-revolution, carried an intensified timbre during "How Great Thou Art," a gospel staple that mirrored his spiritual inclinations. Backstage, after escorting Emily to safety, Elvis retreated to his dressing room, where aides noted his reflective silence, a stark contrast to his usual post-show banter. Psychologically, this introspection likely deepened his self-awareness, prompting reflections on his legacy, not as a mere entertainer, but as a conduit for human connection. The tears, glistening on his cheeks under the lights, humanized him in the eyes of witnesses, shattering the myth of the unflappable king and revealing the tender soul beneath. For Emily, the moment was equally transformative. Her psychological burden lightened by the validation from her idol, fostering a sense of closure regarding her mother's memory. As she returned to her seat, the crowd's applause enveloped her like a warm embrace, affirming her worth in a life marked by rejection. Elvis, resuming the set with renewed vigor, infused his performance with an emotional authenticity that elevated the evening to legendary status. Yet the psychological toll on him was evident in subtle cues: a slight tremor in his hands, a distant gaze during ballads, signaling the internal processing of stirred emotions. This event underscores the dual-edged sword of Elvis's fame. While it provided platforms for such profound interactions, it also amplified their personal impact, leaving him exposed in ways private citizens might avoid. In the broader narrative of his life, such moments of vulnerability, reminiscent of his tearful confessions in the '68 comeback special, highlighted his emotional intelligence, a trait that endeared him eternally to fans. The tears that flowed that night were not just for Emily's story, but for his own unspoken yearnings, a poignant reminder of the humanity that fame could neither create nor fully eclipse. As the concert drew to a close, with Elvis bidding farewell amid thunderous ovations, the psychological imprint of the encounter lingered, a hidden chapter that enriched the tapestry of his untold stories. It affirmed that true greatness lies in the capacity to feel deeply, to connect profoundly. Even in the glare of immortality, the echoes of that emotional onstage revelation reverberated far beyond the confines of the Las Vegas Hilton, weaving into the enduring legacy of Elvis Presley as a figure of profound human depth. In the days following the August 12, 1976 concert, whispers of the incident spread among fans like wildfire through dry grass, transforming a single night's vulnerability into a cornerstone of his mythos. Elvis, ever private about his inner world, rarely spoke publicly of the event, but private correspondences with close confidants revealed its lasting psychological imprint. He penned a note to Emily, enclosing a signed photograph and a personal message. "Your words touched my soul, child. Keep singing your song." This gesture, born from genuine empathy, underscored his commitment to the fans who saw in him a savior, a role that both fulfilled and exhausted him. Historically, the concert marked a high point in Elvis's late career residencies, yet it foreshadowed the physical decline that would culminate in his tragic passing on August 16, 1977. Psychologically, the encounter with Emily served as a poignant reminder of his mortality, amplifying his existential reflections amid health struggles and the relentless tour schedule. In the quiet aftermath, as he retreated to Graceland, the tears shed on stage became a catalyst for introspection, prompting him to reconnect with gospel roots that had always anchored his spirit. Fans who attended similar shows in the ensuing months noted a subtle evolution in his performances, a deeper emotional layering, as if Emily's whisper had unlocked a wellspring of authenticity. This shift, subtle yet profound, enriched his artistry, ensuring that his final yearnings resonated with even greater power. For Emily Harper, the night proved life-altering. Bolstered by the King's affirmation, she pursued her passion for music, eventually finding solace in community choirs and sharing her story in quiet interviews years later. Psychologically, the validation mended fractures in her self-esteem, transforming her from a lost soul into a beacon of resilience. Much like Elvis himself had risen from obscurity, the event's legacy extended to broader cultural narratives, inspiring documentaries and books that explore the human side of celebrities, highlighting how fleeting moments can forge eternal bonds. In Elvis's case, it reinforced his status as more than an entertainer, emotional conduit whose empathy bridged divides of class, age, and circumstance. Delving deeper, the psychological insight gleaned from this untold story illuminates the burdens of iconhood, the constant negotiation between public persona and private pain. Elvis's tears were a rare glimpse into his psyche, revealing a man who, despite worldly acclaim, grappled with the same universal fears of loss and irrelevance. Historically detailed analyses, drawing from biographies like Peter Guralnick's Careless Love, contextualize such incidents within his life's arc, portraying him as a tragic hero whose generosity often came at personal cost. The concert's bootleg recordings, cherished by collectors, capture the hush before the applause, a frozen moment of collective empathy that transcends time. In the grand tapestry of Elvis's saga, this encounter stands as a testament to the redemptive power of vulnerability, a hidden revelation that humanizes the legend. It reminds us that behind every spotlight lies a heart capable of profound connection. And in sharing such stories, we honor the man who made the world weep and rejoice. As the final curtain falls on this chapter, we are left with the enduring truth: Elvis Presley was not just the king, he was the everyman. His tears a mirror to our own souls.